In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ is risen.
Truly he is risen.
When you think of your interactions with other people, and when you first say hello to someone, we see that especially as we grow, we put up a wall. We put up a wall that says, I will give you only that information which I feel that you deserve. And sometimes when we ask someone, how are you doing? They say, I'm doing fine. And I hear that between people speaking with each other, but many times when they come to talk to me, I say, how are you doing? And they say, I'm not doing well at all. And they have told someone else that they were doing just fine. We learn to not really tell the truth about our situations. But when it comes to the church, when it comes to talking to God, we are called, as Christ says, to worship him in spirit and in truth. We see in the gospel reading today that the woman who comes to Christ in the well becomes Saint Photini, one of the myrrh-bearing women. She's a woman who follows Christ and drops everything and just becomes a follower of him. But she comes to this well, and she's a Samaritan. Now, Samaritans were not considered to be in the same class with Jews as far as their faith. That's why Christ says, you worship what you don't know. We worship what we know. But he's talking to her, seeing beyond the now, seeing beyond her current situation, seeing beyond where she even saw herself. And he says to her, if you knew who was really talking to you, you wouldn't say, I'll get you water, but give me the living water. So Christ says to her, if you knew who that was talking to you, you would surely understand that there's something greater that you can receive than water from this well that has existed for so long. And then Christ says to her, she says, well, let me have this water. And he says, sure, I'll give you as much water as you want. Go call your husband. And this is where the backdoor answer comes in. She says, I have no husband. Now, she didn't say she was living with someone. She didn't say she was married 5 times. She just said, I have no husband. Not quite a lie, but not really being truthful, which is how society functions for so long now, for centuries, as we see, and all the way to the time of Christ. Not actually lying, but not really being truthful. So we see the woman says, I have no husband. Jesus says, you're right, you have no husband. You've had 5 husbands. She doesn't give that information. He extracts it from her heart and says, and the one that you're living with now is not your husband. And then she says, I think I figured out now that you're a prophet, that you know things. And then she starts talking about the Messiah. And he says, I am he. I am the Messiah. How many times, think about it in your minds, how many times does Christ say to others, I'm the Messiah? He goes before Pilate. He says nothing. He doesn't say, I'm the Messiah. He says, when he's before the governor, they said, tell me if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And he says, you said so. He doesn't say, I am the Messiah. He says it to this woman. He says, I who speak to you am he. And he tells his disciples, don't go to the house of the Samaritans. Stay with the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But he stays there for a few days and converts masses of people. But what I wanted you to remember today in this gospel reading is Christ says, we worship God in spirit and in truth. You can't, it's not like you can have one without the other. The spirit is how we feel our offering to God. And the truth is, are we really being honest with God? Are we telling him what we feel, how we feel, or are we trying to trick him into thinking we're something else? The shell game of moving it around and saying, aha, this is what I want you to perceive. God is not fooled by any games. He's not fooled by our own deception of ourselves. It doesn't trick him. He sees right through it. And he asks us to worship him in spirit and in truth. Now, in St. Fortini's defense, who really, coming to a well to draw water, and you see this Jewish man talking to you who shouldn't be talking to you in the first place, and asks you to go bring your husband, is she really going to say, you know what, I'm living with some guy right now and I've had 5 husbands, it's been a rocky life, and you know, she wouldn't say that. But Christ redirects her and says, now that you are talking to the church, now that you are talking to Christ, cast aside the way you talk with everyone else. The smoke and mirrors that we give to other people, the deception, the I'm fine when you're really not. And talk to Christ openly and honestly. Even in the midst of our brokenness, even in the midst of our sinfulness, we have to be open and honest with him. Because who are we really fooling? We can't even fool ourselves. And we think we're going to fool God. Be honest with him. Be honest with him where you're at right now today. As you pray, as you talk to God and say, you know what? I have this going on and it's a problem. Help me to confront it head on with your help. What does Christ do for St. Fortini? At that point, she's just a simple Samaritan woman. But he takes her and he remolds her from a confused woman who had multiple husbands and was, who knows what else was going on. He takes her and remolds her and says, this I see in you. And what is the this? Is that you can worship me in spirit and in truth. And we all can worship Christ in spirit and truth. But it takes being honest with him. But before we're even honest with God, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to understand where we really are. Who are we? When we look in the mirror, we, do a bunch of different things to look our best, whether it's wear nice clothing, makeup, fix our hair, whatever the case is, to put on an image of goodness or cleanliness or beauty, when the real beauty is on the inside. And when God speaks to us, he says, show me your inner beauty. Show me the truthfulness and the spirit of love that you have for me, and make it honest. Because he takes our brokenness and puts it aside and brings together the best of us, the best of each one of us. He took this woman who did not expect to become a disciple, who did not expect to become a Christian, and he saw beyond her own brokenness that she probably was limited to by her own perception, by her own brokenness, and by our own brokenness. We can limit ourselves. But if we allow God in, and we say, God, come into my brokenness and fix me. Here's what I am. I'm open before you. Then he takes it and he makes it something extraordinary. He took a simple woman looking for a drink of water, and a woman who didn't even know who she was talking to. But when she encountered him, and he says to her plainly, I am the Messiah, then her whole life changes. Let God come to you and speak to him with your heartfelt spirit and your open and honest truth. We are trained from little children to say no to things that clearly we have done that are wrong. And one of the most funny things that I've seen with one of those shows with children say the darndest things, or those types of shows, is the little child, they put a chocolate cake on the table, and the child comes up and they say, "Don't touch the cake." And then they go away, they come back, and the child's got cake all over their face, and they said, "Did you eat the cake?" And the child's chewing still and saying, "No, I didn't eat the cake. There's chocolate of chocolate fingers. What happened to the cake?" "I don't know what happened to the cake." We cannot have that attitude with God. If we dipped into the cake, we have to be honest and say, "I did," because we are not fooling anyone. And we can't be dishonest with God. We have to be truthful in everything we say, in our prayers, to be open, as biting as they might be to our own brokenness, to say, "You know what, Lord, I'm a wreck. I am broken. I need your help. This is a problem. That's a problem." Ask him and allow him to bring you back together. Because that encounter for that simple woman became an encounter of salvation for her. And she left her jar behind. It doesn't say she took her water jar with her. She met Christ and left it. So how many things do we think that are important, that are just distracting us? How many of those things can we just leave behind and really cling on to Christ himself? I pray that you ask God with your heartfelt spirit and with a sense of new and improved truthfulness to God in your prayers, and watch what he can do for you. Amen.